Hi, my name is Dennis Beatty. Welcome to another Elixir tutorial. To start out, I want to say I'm sorry for being MIA for the past few months. I got married at the end of July, and so the couple months before that and the months since have been a little bit crazy, but now my life's starting to calm back down again, and so I'm hoping that I'll be able to get back to a more regular cadence. But if you're interested in Elixir and Phoenix and LiveView and Ecto, I highly recommend you subscribe to my channel. Basically, I'm starting a new series right now, and I want to make sure that you get the updates as each video comes out. About a year and a half ago, I gave a talk about Ecto at Lone Star Elixir Conf down in Texas. And originally, I planned to speak about Ecto associations and how to set up many-to-many relationships and stuff like that. But I ended up changing my talk to cater more to how to upsert data, just because that's kind of what I was working on at Podium at the time. But I got a comment on my last post asking me to talk about Ecto associations and how to manage them in Phoenix LiveView. So I've decided that I want to create a full series to cover that. One of the most important underlying principles of relational databases is that they're made up of tables that are related to each other. Related, relationship, relational, that's kind of how that name came about. But those relationships allow you to more easily manage your data by keeping it in separate tables. In Ecto, these relationships are usually referred to as associations. Basically, you have a row in one table associated with one or many other types of data in other tables. There's kind of three main types of associations that we work with. There's the one-to-one, the one-to-many, and the many-to-many. So I won't go into too much detail on all three of these in this post, but if you aren't super familiar with relational database design and you kind of want to get a head start on the other two, there's a site called database.guide that has pretty good articles on what a relationship is and on the three types of relationships. So I'll link to those in the blog post as well. Each post in this series is going to cover one of the three types of associations and how we can use it in our database and manage it with Phoenix LiveView. For all three parts of this series, we're going to be working with the example of an admin panel doing user administration. Normally, the use case wouldn't really be worth setting up the real-time features, just because it's a lot of work without a ton of reward. But Phoenix LiveView makes it so simple that it becomes worth it. So basically, if you have multiple admins trying to do administration at the same time, you don't want them to be overwriting each other's work. And so by making the pages use kind of real-time functionality with Phoenix LiveView, you can make it so that they'll see the updates in real time and they will be able to know if they're about to override something that they shouldn't. And so it just makes your admin panel a little bit safer. So before we begin, you're going to want to make sure that you have kind of the latest version of everything. I'm making this video using Erlang 22 and Elixir 1.9. And depending on when you're watching this, those might not be the newest versions anymore, but those are the versions that I'm going to be using. And so if you're using anything different, you might have to make some slight adjustments to make it work for you. You'll also want to have the newest version of the Phoenix generator. I'll include the command in the blog post to make sure that you are using that. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to create a project and we'll call it user admin. So if we just say mix phoenix.new user admin and then let it do its thing, fetch and install your dependencies. And while that's going, let's talk a little bit about one-to-many relationships, because that's what we're going to be focusing on in this post. They usually tend to be the most common type of relationship that you'll model, and they can be really useful for maintaining data integrity. Basically, in our example, we're going to be modeling users and roles. So in many applications, users can have a role, like an administrator, an editor, a subscriber, a basic user. And typically, they can only have one role, but each role can be given to many different users. Because of this, users and roles is best defined as a one-to-many. One role per many users kind of relationship. And so I'll kind of show a picture in the blog post as well of the data model that that this uses. And so if you have any other questions about this, please let me know on Twitter. Hopefully I can clarify it for you a little bit better. Otherwise, let's go ahead and start setting up our database. Well, actually, I take that back. First, we want to go in and add Phoenix LiveView to our project. So if we go back, It looks like my dependencies are done compiling. So we're going to go ahead and cd into the user admin directory, and then I'm going to run mix-ecto.create. And so that generates my database. I'm actually going to run mix-ecto.reset because I was running through this example and forgot to clear my database earlier. And so now I'm going to open up my editor. I'm going to use Atom with the developer flag just because I created or updated the Elixir language to include live EEX syntax highlighting, but that hasn't been merged in yet, and so I'm still using the developer version with my updated code so that we get that syntax highlighting. So with this in place, let's go ahead and head over to the Phoenix LiveView GitHub repo, and the README on this has the installation instructions. I'd recommend following that rather than me because they might have changed since I made this video. So we'll start out by in our mix.exs file, we're going to want to add Phoenix LiveView there, and we'll save that, and then we'll run mixsteps.get again to get that dependency. Then we're going to want to run mix phoenix.gen.secret32 to create a secret for us. And then we'll be copying that into our endpoint config. So if we go into config, whoops, that is the wrong thing. You know what? I'm going to call git init to start a Git repo, and that's going to make my searching a little bit better. So if I go into my config now, it takes me to the correct one. And then I can post here and then grab the secret that was generated. Okay. And then in our router, we need to add the flash. And then in user admin web, we'll be adding some new controller stuff and view stuff and router stuff. Okay, and then exposing the socket in our endpoints. And adding the JavaScript dependency. And then let's go ahead and npm install. While that's happening, let's add the socket in our app.js file. And then add the pattern for live reloading in dev.exs. And finally, import our CSS. Okay, and with all that done, we now have Phoenix LiveView in our project. So, to start out, let's go ahead and do our database migrations. So when you set up a database, when you set up a one-to-many relationship in a database, typically what you're doing is adding a foreign key, which is an ID that corresponds with the ID of a row in a different table, into the table that makes up the one in the relationship. So in this case, we're going to have a role ID field in the users table that refers to the ID field in the roles table. Hopefully this will make a little more sense for you as we're actually writing it out. So in order to properly set up that foreign key, Postgres requires us to have the mini table already in place. In this case, roles. And so let's go ahead and start by creating our roles table. I'm just going to use the Ecto generators to do this. So if we type mix ecto.gen.migration, create roles, It's going to take a second to compile, and then it will actually create that migration. I'm just going to copy that. Okay, and so then let's go ahead and say we want to create a table and call it roles, and we want that to have a name, and that'll just be a string. And so with that, let's go and migrate it to .migrate. And so now that table is created. And so let's create another one. We'll say mix ecto.gen.migration create users. And so let's go into that now. And so this one we want to say I want to create a table called users, and we'll have a name for the user as well, and that will be a string. But then I want to add a role, and so I'm going to add a column called role ID, and it's going to reference the roles table. Okay, and so let's go ahead and run our new migration as well. And so with that in place, we should have our database all set up. So let's add some schemas so that we can actually manage that with Ecto. So if we create in lib user admin, let's create a new file and we'll call it users.ex. And for now, I'm just going to make that an empty module. And then let's create a folder called users as well. And that's going to have a role, and it's also going to have a user schema. And so starting with our role, we will call that useradmin.users.role, and we're going to want to use ecto.schema. And that is going to have a schema in it called roles with the field that we created in our table called name. And that'll be it. And then in our user schema, we'll call that useradmin, .users.user. Again, we'll use ecto.schema. And then that schema is going to have a name as well. But this one, remember, we have that relationship with our role. We're going to want to say that it belongs to a role, and that needs to reference the schema to which it's related or associated. And so we're going to want to associate that useradmin.users.role. And so with that in place, we have our schemas all set up. So now's where things start to kind of get interesting. We're going to go ahead and create our actual live views. So let's go ahead and start by, in user admin web, we will create a new folder and we'll call it live. And then in this new live folder, actually inside of that, let's create a new folder as well and we'll call it user live. And then inside of that folder, then we'll create a file called new.ex. And so we'll call this useradminweb.userlive.new. And so this is going to be our actual live view. So we want to say use Phoenix.LiveView. And this is similar to a controller if you're more familiar with kind of the Phoenix without live view. So our live view requires two functions to get started, and that's going to be a mount function, which will take in a session and a socket, and it needs to return OK with the socket, and then a render function, and that's going to take in assigns, and then we need to return a template. For now, I'm just going to use an empty live view template sigil, and so that just makes kind of an empty template. And then in our router, we're going to want to say I want live. So if they go to /users/new, it'll take them to userlive.new, which will be linked to our live file. And so with that set up, let's go ahead and start up our server. So if we say mix phx.server, oh, it's not compiling. Undefined function live. Interesting. So that means that our endpoint probably didn't work out properly. Or not our endpoint, our user admin web didn't work out properly. It looks like our LiveView stuff didn't go in there. So let's go ahead and go back and grab that. LiveView.router. So if we save that, and then try this again. There we go. So let's go ahead and go to that page. Okay, so we don't get anything there, but if we go to /users/new, now we're seeing our basic template, but the template that we told it to render is just blank. And so let's go ahead and create that template. So if we go in to user admin web /templates, well, actually first let's create the view. So if we go into the view and then we say new file, and we'll just call it user view. So we'll say def module user admin web dot user view, and that'll just use user admin web and then as a view. Okay, and then let's go in and create the template. So if we go into templates and create a new folder, new folder, and we call that just user, and then let's create a new file inside of that, and we'll call that new.html.leex. So we're going to want to have a header that'll say new user, and then we'll have a form, and our form is going to have a field set. Close those. And so inside of our field set, we're going to want a label, and it'll be for a named field, and the label is just going to say name, and then we'll have our input, and ID for it will be name field, so that the label can point to it. And then we're going to have a label for a role field, and that'll just say role. But this one's going to be a select, so we'll say select ID is role field, and then we're going to give it some options. So if we say administrator, let's say moderator, let's say user, and let's say guest. I think that's all we'll do for now. Okay, so with those, I think that'll be all of our options for roles. And so then let's add a submit button. And there we have it, kind of our basic form. So let's modify our live view so that it will actually display that. So if we alias our view, and then we tell our view to render new.html and give it our assigns, then it should render that. So let's go ahead and refresh this page, and there we go. So we got our form. So now, if you go to that page, you'll see your form. But Phoenix actually has some really nice helper methods to make our HTML form a little bit cleaner. So let's take advantage of those. So let's go back and we'll create a change set that the form can take advantage of. and then we'll add those helpers. So if you go into your user's context, and actually let's start in our user schema. And let's create a new change set function. So we'll start by importing ecto.changeSet, and then we'll create def change set, and that'll take in a user to be changed, and then a map with the changes to be made. And so we'll take the user, and then we'll cast it to a change set with the changes, but we're only going to allow the name right now to be changed, and then we'll validate that the name is there. We'll validate that it's required. So that'll just make sure that we're not trying to create any users without names. So now let's create a function in our user's context that will call this. So in here, we'll alias our user schema. So I'm gonna actually write little docs for this function. So we're gonna create a change set to change a user. And then I'm gonna put a type spec on it as well. So we're gonna have a change user function that's gonna take in a user, and then it will take in a map of the changes, and then it's going to return an ecto change set type. So now let's actually create that function. So we'll change the user, take in a user and the changes. We'll default it to an empty map. And then we're just going to call user.changeSet with the user that's given to us and the changes. Okay, so with that in place, let's go into our live view, and we're going to actually use that. So let's alias user admin.users, and then we'll also alias user admin.users.user. So then in our mount function, so when the live view is first mounted and set up, we're going to call change set equals users.change user, and we'll give it a blank, an empty user, and then we need to assign that change set to our socket. So change set is change set, and this makes it so that it'll be available to our live EEX template. So now let's modify the form to actually use this. So if we go over to our form, we're going to change this out. We'll say f equals form for, and then the change set that we're getting from our live view. We want our form to not really submit anywhere, but we're going to add this Phoenix submit is create attribute, which tells Phoenix LiveView that when the form is submitted, we want to send a message to our LiveView telling it to create a user. So then we're also going to add a helper down here. So we're going to replace our submit button, and we'll say submit with the title create. And then we're going to use a special function or a special attribute. It'll be Phoenix disable with creating. So what this will do is when our form is submitting, it's going to disable the button and change the text to creating. And so then finally, let's make a couple other changes. We're going to change out our label here, and that'll be for the name field. And we'll use our for as well. And then we'll change out our input as well. And so this is saying to go ahead and use the F, which is grabbing the data from the change set. And then this will make it so that if your change set actually has data in it, if there's a name in the change set, it will populate this input with that name. So it gives us a lot of really nice functionality out of the box that we don't have to write code for. So now if you reload your browser, the form's gonna look exactly the same, but if you submit the form now, you'll notice it turns red and displays a little spinner. And if we look, we get a nice fat red error in our terminal. And basically it's saying that userlive.new.handleEvent with an arity of 3 is undefined or private. And so we can see that it's trying to call this handleEvent function. It's passing in a create string and then some data for that user, just setting the name to blank. So we're going to handle that right now and actually create a user. So let's go ahead and create the function in our context to create that. So if we go into our context, let's add an alias for user_admin.repo, and that's what's going to let us actually interface with our database. And then I'm going to create a new function. So we'll create a doc for it, and that's just going to say create a user. And so the type spec, we'll have create user, and that'll take in a map of attributes for the user, and it's going to just return either an OK tuple with the user in it, or it'll return an error tuple with a change set in it. So now let's actually create the function. So we'll take in those attributes, and then we'll start with an empty user. We'll create a change set with the attributes that we have, and then we'll call repo.insert, which should insert it into the database and return one of these two types that we put here. And so now we have a function that should be creating a user in the database. So let's actually hook it up to our live view. So we saw this function definition here. So we're going to go ahead and create this handleEvent function. So let's say def handleEvent, and then we notice that it sends this create string, which if you remember is what we specified in our template. So we'll pattern match on that. And then it sends this map of data that has a user key that has our user data. So we want to grab that. So let's pattern match on that and pull out the user attributes. And then our third, you see it has the arity of 3, and our third argument is this socket. So let's get that. And so what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to call that create user function. So that's in our context. We'll say users.createUser, and we'll pass in those attributes that we got. And then we're going to want to match on those. So if we get an OK user tuple in response, that means things worked out properly. So we'll take our socket and we'll go ahead and we'll put flash on it, which is a nice little success message that shows at the top. And I'll show you that in just a second. So that'll be of the info type. And we'll just say user successfully created. Okay. And then we're going to redirect. And this will tell our live view to redirect to a different page. And we'll send it to route.livepath socket and then the current module. So basically this tells it to put this flash on there and then redirect to the same page. And so with that in place, we'll return a tuple with a no reply atom and then the socket. Now, if things don't work out, we'll have an error tuple with a change set in it. And so for that case, let's return, so we'll say no reply, and then we'll assign to our socket the new change set. And so the new change set will actually have the errors on it. And so we'll be able to kind of display the errors to the user. So let's change up our template so that we can display those. So if we go back to our template, then we can add error tags. So underneath the name field, we will go ahead and say error tag F and then name. And so with that, we'll be displaying that error. So now if we refresh the page, we should be able to submit that form. So you'll see if I try and create one with a blank name, that validate required is going to fail. And so it's going to put that error there. But if I do one with a good name, oh, it still fails. Why is that? Function routes.livePath is undefined. Oh, I forgot to alias routes. So in here, let's say alias user admin web.router.helpers as routes. And with that in place, let's use a different one and create, and it still fails. Why is that? Oh, I believe it's because I forgot to recompile. Let's try just restarting the server. And then refresh the page, try it again. So if we just say Dennis, create, and then we get that, that flash that says user successfully created. So that flash data only shows up once, so if we refresh, then it goes away, and we won't see it again. So it's kind of a cool little nicety to have. So with that, we have successfully built a user creation form. So if you look at the running application, you'll see that we're doing an insert into the database right here, but you'll also see that we're only inserting the name and not the selected role. So let's change that so that we're working with the roles too. Our roles probably won't change very often, so we're just going to put them directly into our database. So we're going to do that using our seeds file. And this can be really nice for creating development data so that you have kind of some dummy data to work with when you're developing your app, and then so that you don't have to have your whole production database on your local machine. And that kind of gets rid of some security concerns as well. But in this case, we're just going to use it for inserting our roles into the database. So we'll start by aliasing our repo. This just makes it a little easier to work with. And then we're going to alias our user schema as well. So our role schema. So let's create a quick list of roles. So we're going to have an administrator, a moderator, an editor, a user, and a guest. I think that's one more than we created in our template, so we'll have to update that. But we'll say enum.each, so we're going to loop over these, and we'll say take each of the roles, and with that role, we'll insert into our database a role with that name. And so that way we're not writing repo.insert 5 different times. We're just letting the code do it for us. And so let's go ahead and run the seeds. So get out of there and we'll run mix run priv repo seeds.exs. And when you do that, you'll see all these insert statements. And so we can see that all of our roles got inserted. So I'm going to start running the server again. So now your database is going to have 5 different roles. Feel free to add more if you'd like. Like I said, that's one more role than we put in the HTML in the template. So we're going to actually change our template so that it's grabbing all the roles from the database instead of just relying on hard-coded ones. So let's make a function in the user's context that will get all the roles. So let's create our doc, and this is going to list all the roles in the database. Whoops, wrong button. And so our type spec, we're going to just call this list roles, and it's just going to return a list of roles. And so we'll say list roles, and all we have to do here is we'll say repo.all role. Okay, and so now let's set up the live view to use this function. So when we're mounting the live view, we're gonna grab our change set, and then we'll grab a list of roles as well. And then we need to assign that to our socket. And then we should have that. So now we're gonna need to actually change our template. So if we go into our template, we're gonna make a few changes here. So let's change out our label. Let's just say equals label F will be role, but we're actually gonna say role ID. When you're working with a one-to-many relationship, it's usually easiest to work directly with the ID field. You can use other functions like there's put a soak or cast a soak. For one-to-many relationships where the relationship, the one side of the relationship is in the database, you typically will just work with the ID for that. Because it just makes things a lot simpler. So our role ID, and then we'll set it to be for the role field. And then we're gonna want to generate this select. So we have this big chunk of code, and we're actually going to pare that down quite a bit. So we'll just call it select for the form F, and it'll be for the field role ID. And then we'll say we want the ID on this to be role field. But then we have to actually specify what our data is going to be. And so the Phoenix HTML helpers expect the data for a select to be in either a keyword list or a list of 2-item tuples that have kind of the name to be displayed and then the value for it. And so what we're gonna do, we can't just say roles like that. We're gonna need to turn that into a tuple. So let's call enum.map to map over all the roles, and then we'll convert them into a tuple that will have the name of the role as the name to be displayed, and then the ID of the role to be the value that gets set. And so with that, we should be putting it into the proper format. And so then let's just add an error tag underneath in case somehow they manage to enter some bad data that doesn't make it through our change set function. And with that, we'll save it. And okay, ecto.queryable not implemented for role. Given module does not exist. So that would seem like I forgot to alias, and I did. Let's change this to alias our role and our user. And then we'll refresh this, and then it works. So you'll notice we had 4 roles, and now we have 5 in there. And those match the 5 that we created with our seeds file. So you can try saving another user. But if you look at the database, or if you look at the query, you'll see that we're still not putting that role there. So let's actually get them saving. This should actually be the simplest step, but we just need to change our change set function. So right now we're just casting the name. Let's just change that. So we're also casting the role ID, and let's make that role ID required so that every user has to have a role. And so let's make sure that this works. So if I say Dennis 4, and then I change Dennis 4, I just leave him as an administrator. Now when I go and look, I can see, okay, insert a name and a role ID, Dennis 4 and 1, which is the ID for administrator. So with that, we're successfully saving both the user's name and their role, and we're making use of a one-to-one relationship. However, right now there's really no way to see the users that we've created. And so let's create a user list page where we can watch new users being created and display that role that was chosen for them, and see how to display that from a one-to-many relationship. So in order to get our list of users, we'll start by adding a new function in our context. And so I'm going to create the doc for that. And we'll just say list all of the users in the database. And then type spec for it, we'll say list users. And that's just going to return a list of users. So then our function will be very similar to list roles. We'll say list users. We'll call repo.all user. And with that in place, oh, looks like I have a syntax error here. What did I do wrong? Expected token end. You know what? Let's see what the error looks like here. Okay, in users line 38, it looks like, oh, right there. We're just missing that closing parenthesis. Okay, so let's start it up again. And so in our live view, well, you know what? We're actually going to be creating a new live view. So in our user live folder, let's create a new file, and we'll just call this one index. So if we say def module user admin web dot user live dot index, and then we'll use Phoenix.LiveView, then alias user admin dot users. We'll create our mount function that takes in a session and the socket. Okay, so here's where we'll use it. We'll say users equals users dot list users, and then we'll say okay, assign to our socket the key users is set to users, and then our render we'll take in assigns, and then we'll just use an empty sigil again. Okay, so we have our live view, and so now let's hook that up in our router. We'll just say up above, we'll say live users with nothing after it. We'll go to userlive.index. And so now if we go to that page, just /users with no new after it, we see that that loads properly. And so now let's go ahead and create a template. So if we go into our templates directory for users, let's create a new file, index.html.leex. So in here, we're going to want to we'll have our list of users. So we'll create a table. And so that's going to have two columns. So it'll have a name and it'll have a role. And so then in our body, we're going to want to actually loop over the users in the list. So we'll use a for comprehension to do that. So for user in users, let's go ahead and create a table row, and that's going to have a cell that'll have the name, and one that will have the role. So we can't just do user.role because the role is also a struct. So we'll say user.role.name to get the name of that role. And with that in place, we will end comprehension and then close out our table. So I've saved that. So now let's actually hook it up to our live view. Where did that go? There. So we will alias in our user view. And then in our render function, we'll just say userView.render index.html. Pass in the assigns. Okay. So at this point, if we go to our browser, we should see a list of users, except we're actually getting this error. So this is happening because the role is not loaded. That's because our list users function isn't pulling in the users roles. All we have on the user struct is that role ID. And so we're gonna need to actually pull in the roles. So we'll want to do that using the repo.preload. So in our users context, in our list users function, let's actually change this out. So we'll start with the user, and then we'll do repo.all, but then we'll preload the role. And so this will tell it, okay, grab all the users. Once you have all the users, then get all the roles that are specified in the role IDs and join those onto the users. So if you refresh, all our users should have roles on them, except that if you remember, I created some users before we had our requirement that all users have a role. And so some of my users, their role is set to nil. So I could go in and fix that, but instead I'm just going to say mix ecto.reset, which is going to wipe out my database, rerun my migrations, rerun my seeds. And now if I run my server again, I should just have an empty table, which I do. So now let's go to users/new and create a new user. And now if I go back to my table, you'll see I have a user and the role is joined onto it. So preloading the role is going to work pretty well, but currently it's going to hit the database once to get all of the users and then again to get all the roles. And so we can make that a little bit more performant with a join. So let's go back into that code, and instead of calling repo.preload here, what we'll do is we're going to import ecto.query, and this will let us create a slightly more complicated query. So we'll pipe the user module into join, and we'll do an inner join. We'll take the user that we already have, and we'll join in, we'll say R for role, in the association, U for user, and then role. And so what this is saying is we want to actually perform this join using SQL, joining the role onto the user so that we'll get both of those tables at the same time. And then we want to preload. We'll say we don't really care about the user for the preloading, but we want the role. And then we'll just say stick the role from here into the role on the user struct. So if we run that now, we can do the same thing. But if you look here, rather than doing a select from users and then a select from roles, we can instead just do a single select with an inner join. And so doing it that way is typically just a little bit more performant. But before you make that decision in your app, I would make sure you can time kind of the time that it takes to pull both of those one at a time versus the time to do a join. And in some cases, it might not make sense to do a join, especially once you get several different tables into the equation. So right now we're using Phoenix LiveView, but we aren't really taking advantage of the real-time capabilities of WebSockets and channels. So let's use phoenix.pubsub and let our user subscribe to all the changes that are made to users. So when a user has the user list up, they'll be able to see any new users that are added, and it'll automatically update. So because we use the Phoenix generator to set up our app initially, it already set up useradmin.pubsub for us. So we'll just go ahead and start by adding a subscribe function in our user's context. So if we go to our user's context in the editor, let's create a subscribe function. So we'll start with the doc. We'll just say subscribe to updates to the user list. And so the type spec on that, I only know this because I already looked it up. Basically, the function that we're going to call inside of here will return either OK or an error tuple. So we'll call subscribe, and that's just going to call out to phoenix.pubsub.subscribe, and then it's going to subscribe using the user admin pubsub server. And then let's create a topic as a module attribute that we can use elsewhere. So if we say topic, and we'll just use the module name for our topic. So then let's also create a broadcast change function. And so the point of this one is going to be to actually tell the PubSub server, hey, we made a change, so that it can notify anybody who's subscribed. So for this one, it's going to be a private function, so we won't bother putting a doc on it, but let's still put our type spec. So if we say broadcast change, and it'll take in a user tuple or an OK tuple with a user on it, and then it'll take in a list of atoms, and that's going to be the name of the event to send out. And so let me make sure I have the correct number of parentheses there. And then that's going to return either OK or an error tuple with the term. So our function will say broadcast change, and then it'll take in OK with the result of the change, and then the event name. And then what we'll do with that is we'll say phoenix.pubsub.broadcast to useradmin.pubsub, our server, on the topic that we set up. And then the event that we want to broadcast will be coming from this module. It'll be of the event that we pass in, and then we'll also send the resulting change. And so we'll return a tuple with OK, and then the result, which is going to be kind of the same thing that we're already passing in, so that we can stick this in a pipeline. And so it looks like line 53, I'm missing a closing parenthesis. Dang, I thought I checked too. Right there, it looks like. Save it, now it works. Okay, and then let's actually call that broadcast change from our create user function. So if we say broadcast change, and then we'll say user was created. Okay, so now we're allowing someone to subscribe to updates, and then when a user is created, we're broadcasting out that a user was created so that anybody who's subscribed will get that event and can handle it. So we need to tell our live view to actually listen to that. So if we go in to our live view, on mount, let's just say users.subscribe, and say, hey, if anything happens, we want to get a message. And then let's actually handle that message. So we'll handle the callback handle info, and it's going to be expecting a message from users, and it'll be an event on the user. Right now, it'll only cover created. Well, it will only send events for a user created, but we're going to actually accept any events that come in, so that we can handle edits and other things in the future. We don't really care about the created user right now. If you want, you can take it upon yourself to try to make it a little bit more performant by grabbing the user that's sent and appending them to the list. But for now, we're just going to, whenever that happens, we'll just say users equals users.listUsers. So we'll grab all of our users from the database again. And then we'll return a no reply tuple where we'll assign to our socket a new user list. And so with that in place, we can actually set up a second window. So we will have in one window the user list, which I'm going to refresh. Oh, that's not quite working. So no function clause matching in phoenix.pubsub.subscribe to. So it's saying our topic is not binary. Okay, so that's because in our users context, I've just set it to be the module. If I just set it to inspect the module, that'll convert our Atom module name into a string. So if I refresh now, that loads just fine. So if I go to localhost 4000/users/new, this will let me create new users. So let me just add my wife, make her a moderator. And so you'll see when I created that user, she automatically appears on the left side. So if I created a third one, I'll add my brother and I'll make him an editor. And again, he just shows up automatically. So there you have it. We're working with one-to-many associations in real time. I'd recommend keeping this code on your machine because we're going to continue building off of it in part 2 when we go over many-to-many relationships. Those ones are a little bit more difficult, so I'd prefer that we just already have the boilerplate set up out of the way so that we can just focus on making many-to-many relationships work. If you'd like an exercise for the meantime, I'd recommend making another live view to add new roles and then use useradmin.pubsub to make the new roles show up automatically in that dropdown whenever they're created so that the user doesn't have to refresh the page to set a user to a new role. As always, I'd love to hear how this tutorial went for you. Did you get anywhere? Did you get stuck anywhere? How did it go? If you have any questions about what I said or you wish I'd make a video about a different topic, let me know. Either on Twitter at DNSBTY, or if you prefer, leave a comment on this video. I actually love that because it helps the video get seen by more people as well. So either way is great. And I'll try to get back to you as quickly as I can. Thanks for watching. If you liked this, I'm going to have a link to a tweet that I sent out about it. Please retweet that. Help other people to see it. Also, like I said before, please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I hope that this is going to be helpful for you, and if not, there's probably going to be more videos in the future that I hope will be even more helpful. Thanks again for watching. Have a great day.